And now it's the turn of a very interesting panel, I can be biased, on sustainable finance. So allow me to call on stage Manuel Meneses, who is the GRI Senior Manager in charge of the corporate engagement. So very nice to have you. Very nice, very nice. And our group CFO, Francesco Facchini. So, thank you very much, Manuel and Francesco, to be with us today. And then, before starting the panel, Manuel, would you like to give an overview on who is GRI, the Global Reporting Initiative? Very familiar for some of our stakeholders, but not necessarily for all of them.
Thank you very much again for the amazing opportunity of being here with Prysmian and with all your stakeholders. And I'm going to take advantage that we're here all in person today to make a poll. So maybe all of you who have heard about GRI, who are in a way familiar with GRI reporting, please, if you could raise your hands. Okay, and just keep them raised, all of you who have used the standards for your sustainability reporting. Okay, a few of you. Okay, thank you very much. So this provides me a better idea of where to get started. So I work for GRI. GRI is a global reporting initiative. It's a pioneer on sustainability reporting. So we started our journey 25 years ago, and we put out the only sustainability reporting standards out there. And these sustainability reporting standards are very important because they help companies understand, manage their impacts, their external impacts, and this is very, very important. This is the only standard setter that is looking at impacts. The process of putting together the sustainability report, sustainability standards, it's also a multi-stakeholder process. This means that whenever we're creating the standards, whenever we're updating the standards, we're involving and engaging multiple stakeholders, not only corporates. And it's about bringing this perspective. And of course, for organizations that are reporting this, this is also essential. And this helps them not only engage with their stakeholders to understand where the most relevant material topics or where their largest impacts lay, but also engage with their stakeholders, to listen to them, to understand their expectations, and to make themselves as organizations better informed decisions, but also help all the rest of the stakeholders make better informed decisions to advance sustainability. So in a nutshell, that's what GRI does. I would just add, we're the most widely used sustainability reporting standard. 78% of the largest 250 companies in the world use GRI to understand and manage their impacts.
Thank you very much. Very, very clear. And so when we talk about sustainability reporting, Francesco, as CFO of the group, I know that you have been pushing hard for the company to go for the integrated reporting, also anticipating the deadlines. So we issued this year for the first time the first integrated reporting, and a big thank you for pushing the company in this direction. What's the strategic relevance from your perspective of this integrated reporting?
Yeah, thank you, Christina. It's a very interesting question. Well, as some colleagues said before, I believe that Prysmian really operates in an industry which is pivotal for energy transition and plays a very key role for that. As such, our strategy is naturally moving to a multi-stakeholder strategy, from a strategy which was focused on shareholders' return and which had a shareholder on top of the hierarchy, to a multi-stakeholder strategy. As such, the integrated report becomes a mandatory and a very important communication tool, much before of a compliance tool. This is very important because in the integrated reporting, for the first time, all the stakeholders are at the same level of shareholders, and the ESG performance, for the first time, is surged to the same level of importance and relevance of shareholders' return, of financial performance. Not to talk about the obvious business and strategic impact of integrated reporting and ESG reporting, and I like to mention a few which has to do with the business and a few which has to do with finance. Talking about the business, someone said this before, we have customers highly scoring high quality and extensive ESG reporting because they include the scoring in their tenders, for instance. Similarly, in our integrated reporting, there is a big relevance given to the supply chain policies of our vendors, of our suppliers. It's very important because it helps to attract and retain key people, in particular young talents. It's very important because it provides a much easier access to sustainable finance. And I like to mention on that 1 year ago, we contracted our first ESG-linked term loan, 1.2 billion, which is a very relevant part of our total financial structure and total financing. And much more recently, a few weeks ago, we have finalized the first ESG-linked revolving credit facility, which is a key step in granting a very strong flexibility to our financial structure and our balance sheet.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Francesco. And Manuel, from your perspective, from the GRI perspective, what's the relevance of the integrated reporting?
So let me start by saying that we're looking that more and more companies, such as Prysmian Group, are moving towards integrated reporting rather than having separate financial and non-financial reports. And this is of the utter importance for many reasons. But let me just provide some contextual background to give a better idea of where we're coming from GRI. And again, we have been in this space for 25 years. So GRI is one of the co-founders of the IIRC, the International Integrated Reporting Council, and where we see the value of integrated reporting, much more than the reporting part, is the integrated strategy. How this can help organizations really embed sustainability within the business, within the whole operation, within the value chain. When it comes to GRI reporters, we've also seen that the experience that they've developed in this process of identifying and defining the material topics, and this is where the major impacts of the organization outwards lay, is helping them also anticipate and identify risks and opportunities. So it's part of the same process. So from the GRI perspective, we see these two perspectives, the financial and the non-financial, as complementary and necessarily if we're going to move towards more sustainable business and society. So I would say there's where the value lays.
Great. Oh, thank you very much, very clear. And coming to you, Francesco, I've been listening to you for years saying to all of us we should bring the level of the rigors of the governance of the ESG KPIs to the same level of rigor of the financial KPIs. And then you have been pushing hard the organization. So what are the main challenges that you see in this journey towards integrated reporting?
Yeah, we are on our way. It's a long journey. It's a long journey, but I think the challenges. First of all, I would mention the regulatory challenge. And this is one of the reasons why we decided to move well ahead of the timeline, of the deadline. So we implemented our first integrated report a couple of years before the mandatory deadline, because we thought that we needed time, and everybody needs time, to adapt and to align the robustness of the non-financial reporting processes and internal control system to the same standard, to the same level of the financial reporting, which is very easy to be said, very difficult to be done, because the non-financial reporting is something relatively immature, something at the very initial stage. The financial reporting is something that we have evolved over 20 years. So this is the first challenge. And I believe that when the mandatory framework for the integrated reporting and also the EFRAG will have completed its own work on the ESRS, which are the European Sustainability Reporting Standard, the bar will dramatically increase overnight. And if you didn't start well in advance, you could struggle to comply with that. So that's the first one. The second big challenge, in my opinion, has to do with the way we make our own decisions. Now, and this is something we still have to work a lot, because now I still see companies making decisions according to financial rationale, some kind of decisions, some kinds of, for instance, investment decisions, other decisions based on ESG rationale. Integrated means integrated. So in principle, integrated means to support decision-making according to both ESG criteria and financial criteria. And I want to give you an example. For instance, I remember that in a capital expenditure committee, we were analyzing and approving investments in LED lighting, and we were nicely looking at this, both in terms of the classical financial criteria, such as payback, net present value, IRR, and so on, but also the contribution that this gave in terms of environmental efficiency, such as a reduction of CO2 emissions per each dollar or per each euro of invested capital. And that's the second very important challenge. And I like to mention, if you have time,
we are all fascinated.
Also a third challenge, which is very important and which is still missed, certainly by us in our integrated reporting, and in my opinion, by most of the companies, which has to do with the long-term resilience of the strategy. McKinsey, in early 2000, made very interesting studies about corporate health. So focusing attention not only on the short-term financial performance, but on the foundational pillars which makes a strategy sustainable and resilient in terms of capability to generate financial performance sustainable over time. This, I think, that it is something in terms of strategy assessment which is still missed by certainly the regulatory frameworks and certainly by integrated reports. And I like to make some examples. How much our business and our geography portfolio is diversified, it's something which very much affects the stability and the sustainability of our cash flows. And in order to invest on ESG, we need, first of all, to have a sustainable financial performance, because you need resources. So they go together. There are very important aspects of a sustainable strategy with assuring stability of financial performance over time, which have to do with the innovation, which was mentioned before, with R&D spending, with, for instance, having solid financial structure. I like to mention a few weeks ago, we achieved our first credit rating, and I like to mention that it was an investment grade, and we are the only company in the cable industry with an investment grade credit rating. These are examples of corporate health indicators, which are not necessarily tied to environmental, that's a part, but there is also a part of sustainable financial performance over the long term, which is a big challenge.
Great, Francesca. And Manuel, coming to you, I don't know if it's a question or it's a curiosity. Now you know that GRI has a heart, is a human, but is GRI aware of the challenges of the companies? And so from your perspective, what's your vision on the journey that companies should go along in this reporting process? We are humanizing GRI.
But really that's very important, because at the end of the day, as a standard setting organization, people are like, okay, who's the people behind the standards? And yes, for us, engaging with our own stakeholders is crucial, is relevant. So having the opportunity of being here, sharing this space today, exchanging not only here through this panel, but also through the different conversations, it's very important for us. It's to understand also what are the expectations from the different stakeholders. What are the challenges that the different stakeholders have when they are reporting using the GRI standards. And of course, with the very rapidly changing reporting landscape, we already started bringing some acronyms to the table, because it's full of this alphabet soup. Yes, it is essential for us to be engaging with the stakeholders. So how is it that we do this? How is it, for instance, that we set the standards? Because we're creating standards. We have the topic standards. We have sectoral standards as well. And it's not a process in which GRI will be developing the standards on our own and then we will be publishing the standards. No, it's a multi-stakeholder approach in which, again, we identify, we open the process for the relevant stakeholders to be part of this process, to be integrating their own perspectives. We facilitate, there's a due process for the creation of the standards. And once we have created a first draft of our standards, then there's a period in which any stakeholder who's interested, anyone who has a stake on this, can look at the draft standards and can provide feedback to us. So this is very important for us in terms of understanding what are the needs and what are the expectations. Of course, there are also some challenges related, Francesco, you were also mentioning, with all the regulation that is going on. And in a way, because when we're talking about stakeholders, yes, the users of the reports are the users of the standards are very important, very relevant stakeholders. But GRI, we are also engaging with the regulators, with ranking and rating agencies, with the stock exchanges. We're making sure that we're engaging with this and diversity of stakeholders to drive sustainable development. So in that regard, for instance, a couple of interesting examples would be the work that we're doing precisely with IFRAG and the construction of the ESRSs, the European Sustainability Reporting Standards, in which the EU has already started by looking at the work of organizations such as GRI, which has been having some track already. But we have been working together to identify how can we make this easier and impactful for the different stakeholders. But we're also undertaking some work. We're closely working with the ISSB from the IFRS Foundation, sorry for the acronyms, the International Sustainability Standards Board, who are putting together this other pillar of sustainability. So for us, when we see what's going on in the landscape, it's very interesting because, again, we have been in this space for so long and we're seeing many things happening that we have been pushing for. So we see this with a very positive lens. We think that there should be a global standard governance in which there would be two pillars. The financial pillar, yes. What are the impacts of sustainability matters to companies, outside inwards, but also inwards outside. What are the impacts of our organizations to the environment, to the economy, and to people, of course, including human rights. And within this whole change that's going on, we're creating different ways in which we engage with stakeholders. One would be GRI being present here, but also, and we're very grateful to have Prysmian as a member of the GRI community, we have this global network in which we invite the different stakeholders, the different users of the standards, to build a shared understanding around reporting, not only using GRI, but about the reporting landscape and how can we build a shared understanding and drive sustainability together.
Thank you very much, Manuel and Francesco. This is, of course, a stakeholders engagement event. We are a full public company. We engage with the shareholders on a continuous basis, and then, of course, we engage with our customers all the time because we are a customer-focused company. What's the relevance of engaging also with the reporting institutions? So to enlarge, if you want, the scope of the engagement, which is not necessarily the standards, right, when we talk about engagement.
No, is a very key point to corporates engaging with regulators and with all the institutions which are setting the standards. First of all, because it's still a very, as I said, immature and fluid environment. And of course, we need to crystallize the criteria, we need to crystallize the reporting methodology, the frameworks. That's very important. Some things, I take the example of the taxonomy, just to give an example, are still very much moving. And it's very important to exchange, a mutual exchange of information, of experience, of the views in order to get to a more firm base. Then I believe that engagement with the regulatory bodies is also very important to get to a simplified framework. I think that it's still too complex. That's very typical of early stages. I saw this, for instance, I remember I was already CFO of a company when IFRS have been implemented. And I've seen this at the beginning were very complex, where a lot of overlaps, a lot of things. Time by time, the framework got more simplified. And I think that a work to simplify also all these reports, integrated report, sustainability report, TCFD, and SASB report, and GHG.
Tell me.
I don't want to say saying more or less the same stuff. I think it's a big challenge that sooner or later we have to tackle to make it more effective to the users in the end, because the users risk to be a bit overwhelmed and to miss the points.
Thank you. And Manuel, last point, when you were already commenting on the relevance of the engagement with the company, the corporations. So what's the next step in engagement? Would you suggest further way of engagement? Would you suggest further opportunities, further value going forward?
Yes, and again, as the landscape is so rapidly changing, from GRI, what we're doing is we're continuing engaging with the organization that we have been working for the past years, but also for many organizations that are relatively new to the space. And I think that being here at this very moment with some of your most relevant stakeholders is a very important space. Because when people look at this, it's too much. It's like, where should I get started? And what we see from GRI's perspective and our approach to materiality, and again, it's about impact reporting, but if you have identified your material impacts, again, and I want to make emphasis on this will already help you identify your risks and opportunities, which is part of this other pillar. You're starting with the right foot. So because of the way in which GRI is built, based on authoritative international instruments, UN guiding principles, OECD guidelines, using GRI allows and helps companies get started. When should I get started? Yesterday. The second best moment to get started is today. So what we're doing is engaging with these organizations, trying also to help them understand what's coming within the landscape and how can GRI provide this help and this support to get organizations moving and us moving as a society towards the direction that we should be moving to comply with the goals and targets of sustainable development.
Thank you very much. I couldn't thank you more. Thank you very much, Manuel. Thank you very much, Francesco. Thank you very much.